Hey everyone, welcome to this wonderful event here. My name is Frank. I am the founder and mostly the operator of Hectoria. First let's do a quick introduction as is customary. I run Hectoria, which is a capture the flag platform that mostly does story-based capture the flag exercises. So what I mean by that is you don't just get just the assignment where you would go like, hey, find this person, locate this thing on the map, but there's a whole story that kind of goes with it. So that is Hectoria. We'll show you a little bit more about that as we go further on. But the topic for today is 5 tips for creating a CTF. And to clarify, CTF stands for Capture the Flag Exercise, or Capture the Flag. So what is a CTF? Basically, a CTF is an event, or it can be a standalone challenge or part of a larger event where you, the player, has to basically find a predefined answer that is hidden somewhere, and you get there by using certain skills. So that can be OSINT, open source intelligence. It can be something related to web vulnerabilities. There are a lot of platforms out there that do this. It's a great training tool. It's a great learning tool. And one of the things that is just fun about this is actually getting to make your own challenges as well. So this won't be like a super hands-on workshop of me actually like creating a challenge on the spot. But over the time, a little bit over a year now of me running Hectoria, made countless challenges, both static challenges, live challenges, all sorts of things. And I just want to share like the 5 tips that will sort of guide you to make a fun CTF. So yeah, let's get into it. This won't totally be like death by PowerPoint. There are in total 5 slides after this, but they're more like handles. Like I'll give actual examples, show you some stuff on Hectoria, kind of how I work when I make these events and things like that. So yeah, let's get into it. So tip number 1. You need to decide if your event has a limited time frame or if it should stay alive much longer. Now, the main reason why this is important, it will determine what kind of materials you can actually use. So, for example, Hectoria has a monthly event. It resets every first day of the month. You get a scoreboard online of all the people who have completed the previous month, and the new month goes live and people start competing again. Now, with an event that is monthly or weekly, for example, you have, in general, a lot more freedom in all the things that you can actually create, as opposed to having a fixed challenge. So if you make a fixed challenge that doesn't basically change, it sort of stays online forever. I'll kind of show you what I mean by that in a minute. You're a little bit more limited to what you can do with that. So, for example, you would want to create an event that stays online forever. Like you're like, hey, I'm just going to make a few challenges. I'm going to put them on my blog, and if people want to, they can play them. Now, if you were to use, let's say, certain news articles, certain social media posts, even Twitter accounts, even if you, let's say, make a sock puppet, so a fake social media account, the chances are that it's going to get flagged, it gets deleted, and then your challenge is broken. So using temporary resources like social media accounts is something you can only really do if you have a temporary challenge, something that comes and goes. Another example of this where even though it was a monthly event we did at Hectoria somewhere last year, it was about catching art thieves. And it was based around an actual art exhibition. And during the CTF, the museum actually shuffled some paintings around, so parts of the CTF didn't make sense anymore. And that happened 2 days after we went live. We didn't know it was going to happen. So we had to improvise on the spot and inform players that something was happening. So using temporary resources does give you a lot of creative freedom. For example, if you want people to attack a website, it's not that costly to host a website for a few days or whatever, or maybe a week. But if you're going to operate this thing longer, you need to maintain it. You need to keep checking in on it. So that is something, the first thing you kind of need to keep in mind, because it will greatly dictate what type of materials you can use. So for example, to not do complete death by PowerPoint, so here we have the Hectoria website. Now, in the right corner here, you'll have community contracts, official contracts, and then the ongoing operation. So the operations start every month, they're temporary, while the official contracts here are, they stay online. So if we look at this contract, for example, you'll see here that this challenge, basically figuring out what this text means. This is not like a temporary resource. You have this image here, and as long as the image is here, you can basically participate in this event forever. This can be here 10 years from now, and you'll be able to participate. Now, if I grab the one of the ongoing operations, I'm actually going to grab the operation from last month, Operation Manhunt. So if I take Manhunt here, you start off with, there we go, let's see, materials. Yeah, so you start off with the with a Twitter account basically of this character. So it seems I've already taken this offline, but basically you start off with a Twitter account. Here it is, linked to the Sock Puppet Twitter account. I am just completely blind. Yeah, so here's the Sock Puppet Twitter account. Now, there is a chance that this Twitter account goes offline. Somebody reports it, or the Elon Musk army of AI, whatever he has going there now, flags it as being fake or posting something that's not allowed to be posted, whatever. It goes offline. Then your CTF is broken. So that's why it's important that the first step that you do is figure out, like, hey, what is my time frame for this? Do I want it to stay online like forever, or do I want it to just be there for a very limited amount of time? So that was tip 1. Let's see, tip 2. Yeah. And everybody of you who works in the IT field will probably start laughing now. Yes, documentation. Document every step the player has to make and take note of each detail. Now, it should be a no-brainer, but I'm just going to include it here anyway because it is very important. You basically just want to document every step that the player is going to do piece by piece, and use the actual materials. So if you, for example, put like some metadata in an image or some steganography, make sure that the place that you take those notes can actually facilitate that type of data, that it doesn't get scrubbed. If you have a note-taking application, for example, that would remove metadata because they're like, oh, we're a privacy-sensitive note-taking application, and they remove metadata. And that metadata in the image was actually important, was part of your CTF. That's at least gone in your own documentation. So make sure you have a place where you can really document all of this. So as I said, not complete death by PowerPoint. I will show you my documentation. So I'm currently using Obsidian for all of this. Switched away from Notion a while ago for reasons. And basically how this is split up for me here. I have my Hectoria of contracts, creator vlog for my YouTube videos, and here are the operations and little IDs and to-do list. So if I click open the contracts of 2022, these are all the permanent, like, playable contracts made in 2022. Click here, for example, Intergalactic Warfare. And you'll have all the text here, the prologues, the briefing, steps to completion. So spoiler alert, there might be an answer in here somewhere if I scroll down further now. So the exact image is used for the player. Then there's a link here, for example, that will actually take me exactly to where this was in the map, so I can retrace my steps and really see where everything was basically. Now, the way to construct the passwords, sample passwords, and I always have a little to-do list to write the concept, the story, and all the other stuff, make the card, do the hosting and stuff. And this just goes for all of these. Let's see, the archive. Again, the story, steps to completion. As you can see, there was a wonderful rickroll in here. and so forth. So all of this is documented step by step. Same goes for the, let's say, the Operation Manhunt here, because there's no spoiler alerts in this, for example, or Nemesis. Why does this not load? There is definitely something here. I think this is broken. Wonderful. Oh, there it is. Yeah, there's just a lot of material in here to load. So as you can see here for Operation Manhunt, every step here is documented, exactly where it links to, all the locations, everything is in here. So that's very, very important. Document everything. So with that out of the way, we can move on to tip 3. Now, a little side note for this documentation. Of course, if you're making a really quick challenge, you know, like very simple, for example, geolocation stuff. Not as in simple that you made something that is just easy to solve, but just a very straightforward geolocation challenge where it's like, okay, give me, you know, the street name, for example, where this picture was taken. Your documentation is going to be much smaller. But if you wanted to have multiple steps, you will quickly notice that you are going to need a lot of documentation. So let's take a quick hydration break. Always good. So let's move on to tip number 3. Set clear boundaries for interaction and the scope of the CTF. Now, this step is usually where people kind of fail when they try to make something. So setting clear boundaries, what I mean by that is you need to set boundaries and kind of like a scope of what people are allowed to interact with. If you tell people to go and find someone on Twitter, you better make sure that when they find that person, they really know it's that person. Like make sure that, for example, you'll have a certain code word in the in the description, or they'll have a picture posted, tweeted, for example, which has a certain like code in it or certain image that they can recognize. Or, you know, if they're investigating someone on social media, just give them the social media profile and state very clearly that that is the only, you know, thing that they're going to interact with. Because if you don't do that and you just tell people, like, yeah, find, you know, this particular person on Twitter, for example, they might find the wrong person, think it's the correct person, you know, and then start, you know, sort of stalking someone and picking apart someone's life, basically, without that actually being the intention. So you're invading someone's privacy and things without, you know, without consent, and also just completely out of scope for what you actually wanted to do. Another thing that these boundaries and the scope are good for is just to make sure that people stay on track. A lot of times you'll see people trying to make challenges or CTFs, and they have it in their head. If you do it with a team, like even the team might have tested the CTF, but still, because, you know, they all have knowledge of how it was built and the thought process going into it, you'll often not sort of like catch the rabbit holes that people can fall into, or like basically the way that it should actually be played. So make very clear boundaries in a scope for people to stay into. So for example, you will just go like, you know, this is the social media profile, or you know, locate the images in this Google Drive folder, you know, and then you can put another instruction there. I'll actually grab an example that just came to mind for this. So let me just pick a contract, so a permanent CTF, basically, something that doesn't go offline, that has multiple steps in it. And I will kind of show you what I mean with sort of keeping those boundaries. So let's see, official contracts, and it was made quite some time ago, I think, probably on page 3 here, no, page 2. Lost Down Under, there we are. So yeah, here in this CTF, basically, people need to do a lot of different things. So at first, one of the things people need to do here is decipher, you know, like this material, and there's all these images here. And basically you have to then, you know, like do something with those things. So the steps here are in the briefing. Like, we need to figure out what these 7 images and the text mean. Are they connected? Is this a rabbit hole with our current information? We have reason to believe these images are directly related to the suspected plans for bombings. So basically the answer from the text and images leads to the password for unlocking the flag file. So yeah, once people basically decipher this text, it will actually give them the instruction of what to do with the images, which is finding these locations and then using those locations to do the next thing. Now, I'm not going to exactly tell what to do here, because that would basically be 3 spoiler alerts for 3 contracts in this one video, sort of taking the fun out of them. But once you decipher this, it will give you a very clear instruction for like, hey, locate these 7 images. And then, you know, take those locations, format it in this way, and then, you know, do this next step, and then you will get the answer. But it's very clearly described. There's no sort of out of scope things going on here. And the same thing goes for, you know, like more temporary events. So if we're going to grab, for example, monthly Operation Manhunt. So again, basically, here, link to the sock puppet Twitter. Note, this is a live target as such, not all information is available at the start. And basically, the thing people here just have to do, it is your task to monitor the Twitter account and piece together enough information to locate Maxim Kotova. Be careful not to interact with the account in any way, nor with the account it follows. Use the posted information to geolocate Kotova and relay the information to me. And relay to me is, of course, there was an answer submission form here earlier, and you would, you know, put in the answer code in there. So it doesn't leave any room for interpretation. It's, you know, here's the Twitter account, and you're going to geolocate. Where's this guy? That's all you're going to do. You're not going to interact with anything this account follows. You're only going to, you know, dig into like, where's this person. So yeah, but people will probably say, like, why didn't you include, you know, accounts that follow this account? Probably other people will start following this account to keep track of it, for example, and that is fine. And if you want to look at those people, that's, you know, that's up to you. Then just don't follow this account. So that is kind of an example of setting clear boundaries for the interaction and scoping out the CTF that you want to do. That's a very important step. No. Another important step is staying hydrated. All right, so let's get on to step number 4. Make your answers clear and leave ambiguity out of the CTF. Guesswork means frustration. So this kind of ties into setting the boundaries, but it does require a mention in this sort of tutorial all on its own. So making answers clear and leaving ambiguity out of the CTF. It basically just means that whatever you have in your head, like a lot of times I see people make challenges where they have it all in their head, like what conclusions someone should come to. But that's not where they go. Like, for example, people will use a riddle or, you know, something that is much more vague than just, you know, like geolocate this thing, or you know, using web vulnerabilities or whatever you want to use. So wherever like kind of like free thinking is involved, always make sure that people know what they're going to find on the other side. So what I mean by that is if you tell people, like, you know, you just give them a riddle, and you know, people will interpret that in several different ways. But if you just give them the riddle and say, like, figure out using this riddle what time X event takes place, or use this riddle to figure out which of these images is relevant for the geolocation. So let's say, well, here's a CTF idea. You would have a riddle, and then people need to use the riddle to figure out which of like 6 images, for example, is the actual relevant image to go and like geolocate where someone is. So instead of just giving people the riddle and the images, you would go like, okay, use this riddle to figure out which image to use for the geolocation part. The other 5 images are going to be irrelevant. So be really clear in what you expect next. You can put exercises in there of free thinking, of things that are left up to interpretation, as long as people know where they're actually going to go with that. Because if you leave that out, people are just going to get lost and they're going to get super frustrated. If you just leave something in there that can go, into a million different places on the internet, it might just be in your head. And once you've explained it to someone who is like testing your CTF, it might also be in their head, and they're going to be like, oh, that's fine. And then it actually goes live and it doesn't work. So leaving the actual guesswork out of this is just very important. Tell people like, this is the information, this is what you're allowed to do with it, and that's where you will end up next. Or like, this will be the marker where you found it. So going back to what I said earlier, for example, like the Twitter account, having someone find a social media account, tell them beforehand, like, hey, once you find the Twitter account, you will notice it will have an image with this on it in the Twitter feed. So that leaves absolutely no doubt to people that they found the correct account. It still can be something that is up to interpretation, how you're going to get there, for example, how you're going to get to the end result. But you'll need to know once you get there that you've actually found it. And it might sound silly now that I've explained it, or maybe this is still too ambiguous. But I've seen it go wrong several times, and it always leads to a lot of frustration. The frustration is, of course, less when there's like no prizes involved or something. But if it's something that's ranked even slightly, people get competitive, and then any type of this sort of ambiguity and guesswork will just lead to like massive frustrations. And then everybody's in your DMs talking like, hey, let me know, what do you mean with this, and fishing for information, and yeah, it just is not a good idea. So that is tip number 4. Now, moving on to the final tip for creating a good CTF. Tip number 5. This is wonderful. I was able to count to 5. Big win today. So testing can be tricky, but walking someone through your steps can help you catch errors. So what I mean by testing can be tricky is that, like, if you're going to give your CTF to a whole group of people, the chances are that the people who are testing your CTF, unless like you do a very specific niche and you have the absolute experts in that field testing the CTF, or you can get a fairly substantial subset of users that are going to do these tests for you, they're not going to be very reliable. What's just true with these, like what is easy for someone, is terribly hard for someone else. So if you don't have a lot of people testing your CTF, which you probably won't have, because then probably most of the people that would otherwise play your CTF have now tested it. So testing can be very tricky depending on someone's personal skill set, also on the instructions you give them going in, and also of the skill levels of the people who are actually going to be playing later on. So it can be tricky. Of course, you can do it. We do it with Hectoria as well sometimes, where I'll actually have a few people try out a CTF, or at least bounce an idea around. Although I have to say, after just like stumbling here and there and just learning from doing, you can basically follow the previous 4 tips and not need too much testing. And mind you, testing is not the same as quality insurance. Quality assurance is a completely different thing. Testing is just the viability of the steps. Is this too hard to solve? That type of stuff. Now, by quality assurance, I mean is if, for example, with Hectoria, we use these flag files. So let's go to the official contract, grab Sleeper Cell, for example, and you download a flag file. You download an actual flag file, which is an encrypted zip file. And that's how you capture our flags at Hectoria. you download this flag file, which contains this cool card. So they contain these cards basically. And once you found the flag is the password, you unlock the file, and then you have your card as a reward. So quality assurance, in this case, for example, means that I will make sure that that password works. I'll try it in a few different archiving tools, make sure there's no special characters hiding in it. I'll put it in a notepad first, that removes all the additional formatting, make sure there's no extra spaces and stuff. So that type of stuff is just really important to do. But that is the quality assurance part, not so much the actual testing of how hard the CTF that you've made actually is. So basically, walking someone through the steps you've made can help you catch these errors. You can tell them like, hey, these are the steps you need to follow. Just see if that works. See if there's anything funny about it, like some mental loop I've taken that doesn't work. And make sure that like the password works, or make sure the flag input actually works. You can test in a few browsers if that's relevant for what you're doing. Let's say you've made something online. Use CTFD, for example, as a platform. You want to see if it works in Chrome and in Firefox. Do that as well. So that is a really big step as well. Make sure you do some sort of quality assurance and walking someone through the steps to see if they actually make sense. So those are kind of the 5 big steps. Let's quickly just jump to one and run them through one more time. And then after that, I'll just show a few random tools that I use to make these CTFs. And if there's a little bit more time left, I can ramble on a little bit more. So to go over them one more time. Tip number 1, decide if your event has a limited time frame or should stay alive much longer, because this will dictate whether or not you need to use fixed materials in locations that don't change, or if you can get really creative and use all sorts of temporary resources that are out there. Tip 2, document every step the player has to make. Take note of each detail. Documentation is just always important, whatever you do. If you work in cybersecurity, if you work in tech, if you're a developer, and if you make CTFs, documentation is very important. Document every step. And as I said, use a note-taking application that doesn't alter your data, so that it actually gets stored in the way that you might later need to use it again. Tip 3, set clear boundaries for interaction and the scope of the CTF. So tell people these are the materials, this is what you're allowed to do, and this is what the outcome will be. Because otherwise people will jump into rabbit holes. They might harass people online who they think are part of the CTF, and that is just not a good idea. Tip 4, make your answers clear and leave ambiguity out of the CTF. Guesswork means frustration. If you make people guess, they get frustrated. If it's not completely clear how they can recognize that they've reached the next step or that they've reached the answer, or if there's just uncertainty about how to actually go about a step, it means frustration. Best case scenario, people jump in your DMs and it happens a few times and you go like, oh, let's change this. Worst case scenario is people get super frustrated on social media, or they just plain up leave, or they get hostile or whatever. Just not a good experience for anyone playing your CTF. As I said, the last tip, testing can be tricky, but walking someone through your steps can help you catch errors. And of course, you need to do your own quality assurance to make sure that every step is actually doable, that somewhere along the line, some metadata didn't get removed by a tool you uploaded it to, or that the steganography you've used actually works, that you can actually reverse the ciphers properly, that that if you use a password or a flag somewhere, that there's no spaces in it, for example, things like that. So those are my 5 tips. What I wanted to do next was basically just go over a few tools, for example, that are fun to use to make challenges. As most of all of this is geared towards OSINT. Now, Hectoria also does a few other things. We also focus a little bit on cybersecurity stuff. We have some packet capture things in here as well. some steganography, cryptography, and things like that. But the bulk of what we do is OSINT. And I'm just going to go show you a few tools and give you a few bonus tips on like what's fun to do and what isn't. So number one, within OSINT, geolocation is just super popular, always has been, and it's just one of the most used things. Now, in that light, one thing that is annoying with, for example, Google Maps is as soon as you start using Street View, you see all these, these pop-ups here of locations, like stores, little dots, you can click on them, logos. You see street names popping up and a lot of other things. Now, you can use photospheres, but photospheres might actually be copyrighted. It's usually not really that big of a deal, but use a photosphere that is publicly available on the internet for educational purposes. However, there might be like watermarks in it, it might be distorted or whatever. So one tool I like to use for street level things, and it's fun because not a lot of people use this. So they'll be looking in Google Maps where things look different, or Google Street View, but I use Mapillary. So it's Mapillary, as you see it up here. And what this basically does, it's sort of the same as Google Street View. So you can just go to a random place, you go to France here somewhere. And all these green places you see here are photospheres basically. And this is mostly made by people driving around in cars, but also people walking around will sometimes participate in this. So here's some like random row of houses or something. And you can hover over these and it will give you a preview of what happens. So this is a biker or like a bicyclist. You click on this and here you get a really nice image. So this was from 2016. Nice, and you get photospheres here and you can move. You can trace your steps basically, what they did here. It's someone on a bicycle. And this just gives really good sort of like street view things because there's no watermarks in them. And it probably looks different than Google Maps, and they actually get to some sort of like funny, nice places basically. So here's another one. This one looks a little bit older as well, 2018. So some of these might be a little older, which can actually be fun because a lot of the stuff in Google Street View is very new. So it might add a little bit extra flair to the challenge. But this is what I often use for finding geolocation challenges. Now, another cool tool to use is Satellites Pro for a few reasons. Sometimes it's fun to make challenges where you, for example, use a satellite view of an area, especially now with people, tracking certain wars, tracking military movements and other things, training yourself to be good at also doing geolocation using a map, geolocation using a satellite image can be very valuable. So let's just pick, let's say, for example, a random country on the map here, completely coincidental. For example, this random region over here that usually doesn't make the news. For example, here, this random city, totally random. As you can see, this is like super detailed stuff here. So the cool thing you can do here is you can go here, switch map, and you can turn off things like map labels. And now you just get this wonderful satellite image view, basically. So you can take, for example, let's find something. This section here looks pretty, like it sort of stands out. This is something that people could identify somewhere. You can take a screenshot of this and have people geolocate it. You can, how much pointers and tips you give them is up to you. But this makes for really nice sort of geolocation challenges. And since it puts this little red dot in the middle here, this sort of red cross, what you can even do, like get a really precise, like put it here and ask people exactly where this, this dot was, or this little cross. So it's very useful for doing like satellite-based geolocation challenges. See, because there's just nothing here now. You just get basically just a map, and you can switch different maps. This is Apple Maps. The application Apple Maps didn't receive really good reviews, I think, but their actual map is quite good. So that is a tool I use often. Another tool to use is CyberChef. So CyberChef allows you to take all of these, like data formats, encryption, encoding, ciphers, all sorts of stuff. You can use keys, public keys, you can use compression, hashing, and all sorts of other stuff. And you can kind of just bake something with this. So you would put text in here, for example. Let me just like write something. This is text dot, and I'm just going to go on. Oh, that's something I copied last. Good. Great that was still on my clipboard and not something super sensitive. do this video again. Let's see, favorites. Yeah, so to base 64, for example, and you can go like, from here, do it to, base 58, whatever. And you can put different steps in here and all sorts of other stuff. So again, when you use this, document it so you actually know what happened. But you can get really fun results. Like you can take, for example, like an instruction, and then you can encode it a couple of times, and then you give people this text, and then they first need to decode it, and then they get the instruction and they figure out what to do with an image or with a satellite location, and then that leads you to a password, which is, for example, the street name, and that street name password, then opens a file, and then that file, for example, has a malware sample in it, and then there's something in the malware sample, and you can chain all those events together and you document them. So you can sort of use these tools to do all sorts of good stuff with it. Now I see I didn't open one of the tabs that I use a lot, that is what3words.com. So this tool is really wonderful because what this basically does, it divides the entire world into squares of like, I'm not actually there, by the way. This is not a violation of my privacy. I'm not there. So basically this divides the entire world in 3 word locations. So you just get these squares basically, and if we move over to Tallinn here, or pick some other random location, doesn't matter, literally doesn't matter if it's an important location or something well known, you just get the whole world split up into all of these squares. You click on one of these squares and it says this is strangely entrepreneur clanks. So if you're trying to make a flag, this makes a really good flag, strangely entrepreneur clanks. It's easy to format, it's like you can do, like CTF, double point or whatever, underscore, and then, it has to have this format, or even just this format, even with these 3 slashes. Like find the location, use what3words to exactly pinpoint where this is. And this is then really good in combination with this tool, with Satellites Pro, because you can take Satellites Pro, for example, and really zoom in on something and put it exactly here, for example, and then tell people to use what3words to find the exact square that this falls into, for example, which then would be the flag. So these 2 tools make for a really nice combination of actually finding flags. You can of course also just use a picture from Mapillary. You can be like, where exactly was this person standing? Like you take a picture, for example, of this front door, which will most likely only have like 1 or 2 squares in front of this. So you would just go, okay, like where was the person standing who took the picture? And if people look on the what3words thing, they'll just see like, okay, this here is a square, and then this is where the street starts with the tram here, and then that's another square, and they'll find it. So these kind of tools are really fun to make geolocation challenges with, and CyberChef is just overall really useful both during a CTF, but also to make fun challenges with this, because you can do so many different things with it. So that's a few of the tools I use a lot, especially towards OSINT. Of course, for other challenges, like things related to packet captures, it's usually something made with Wireshark or PCAPNG or whatever you want to use. So that's of course completely different. You might have an ISO of something which has like a disk file which has stuff in it. But in relation to OSINT and the most popular things in OSINT, which is usually something that has to do with ciphers and cryptography and whatever, and maps. These are the tools I use a lot for that. Now, there are, of course, other tools that do the same thing, but it's just a little overview of what I use. So, yeah, let's get back here, all the way back to the beginning slide so we can properly finish this up. So, yeah, I really just want to thank everyone for being here, being part of this conference. I know Joachim worked really hard on this to make all of this possible. He's doing a lot of different things right now, making a lot of cool stuff for everyone, mostly completely for free. Yeah, so I hope people kind of get inspired by this to go and make cool challenges. You can make the community challenges on Hectoria if you want. We have a complete form for it that you can fill out and make your own contract there. We will even help you make a good contract. We have a team of people that make these challenges that will help you create something. So just reach out to us on Discord if you're interested, and we'll get you started. Or otherwise, just go make something fun. It's a completely different way of looking at CTFs once you've created one yourself. It's not that scary to make them. It's not that difficult. You can start off really simply by just making a geolocation challenge, playing around with some ciphers, using that. Steganography, for example, is very popular as well. And just make something, put it out there into the world. You can put it on your Medium blog or on GitHub or wherever that you already are, and just have people interact with it and see what happens. So yeah, again, thanks everyone for watching. I hope this was somewhat useful and not completely boring, and I wish everyone a very happy week, and I will see you next time.